Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to my sewing room. And today is the Sew Your Stash series, episode number 38. And it's also the Scrappiness is Happiness Quilt Along week 29. We've only got 2 more weeks after this, but this will actually be my last video tutorial for the quilt along, because the next 2 blocks I've already done the video tutorials in my Sew Your Stash series. And so this will be the last tutorial. And so this is my Spring Basket Quilt. And yes, spring's finally here in Utah. So now I'm happy to be sewing this spring basket. And I pulled the quilt off the wall so I could just kind of talk to you about this a little bit. So let's just look at it first instead of last like we normally have done. And so what I want to tell you about my Spring Basket Quilt is this is another planned scrappy quilt. Meaning you can see that I did, well, in these 2 you can see, and you could see in the opening video, that I did all of my baskets aqua, and then I did all of the trim denim. I did all of the flowers red, all of the flower centers yellow, and then the leaves 2 colors of green. And then I used the same background throughout, which is this is my pink bee cross stitch. But the reason I call it planned scrappy is because even though they're all aqua, they're all different aquas. And even though they're all denim, they're all different denims and different reds and things like that. And so that's one way that I do my planned scrappy, so that I can just sew for my stash baskets. And I don't necessarily use yardage for this quilt. You could use all of the same aqua, but why not just get in my baskets and just do different, when I say aquas, I did some kind of teals and aquas. But you know, why don't you just pull from your baskets and pull those kind of fabrics and just gather them all together? And I just want to show you that you can do an entire quilt with scraps, but it still is kind of planned scrappy. And I know I've talked about this before. I've talked about it especially in the applesauce quilt and things like that. But my word, I'm always finding threads. But I just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit and show you that. I also, let's see, while I have it down here, let me show you what I used for my wide back. You can see that that is from my Granny Chic wide back. And look at all those vintage embroidery patterns in there for my grandma. I thought that was a perfect back for this. This quilt, I'm glad we're in May because it reminds me of May Day. And again, spring and baskets. This is one of my favorite blocks in the quilt. One of the reasons is because I use all sizes of my scrappy strips to pull for this block. This is a 16-inch block. And let's open up into the book and let's talk about it just a little bit. So there's the basket pattern. And then here is the quilt right here. So how I did this quilt is I like to, let me fold this back. I like to do this setting quite a bit with my quilts. It's a fun setting where you simply just sew the blocks on top of each other. And there's 12 blocks, and then just put rows in between. I put sashing in between and then a little bit wider around. But the reason I'm pointing this out, okay, so this measures 68 by 86. But I'm going to show you today, and you can see that I have cut for smaller. And in the opening, you saw a smaller block that I decided for you guys to draw up an 8-inch block. And look how cute these 2 look together. So it's just half the size. So that means you could easily, very easily, do a small quilt. Could be a baby quilt, just a wall quilt. And it would just be 34 by 43. By just doing half the size borders, half the size sashings, and putting it together. And that would be super easy peasy to do, okay? So now when I'm making this block in the book, it's the exact way that I'm gonna show you how I make the 8-inch block. The construction is exactly the same. They're just 2 different sizes. I have designed many basket blocks over the years because I just love a basket with a flower in it. This one is one of my favorites for another reason. It's super simple, where I add the easy corner triangles onto these background rectangles here. And I kind of look at it as 2 blocks, meaning I make this block first, the center block, and then I make the basket to surround it. Okay, so let's get started. And I think I'll just put that there so that we can see both. Let me back up my truck a little bit. And let me turn on Miss Millie. This is Miss Millie, named after my grandma. I've got my Seam So Easy guide here, so I've got my accurate 1/4 inch seams. Now, it's always important to do accurate 1/4 inch seams, but especially when you're sewing a smaller block, because this is when it really shows up, when you can get those seams off. So what we're going to do is the flower block first, and what I'm going to construct are these leaves first. So I've got 2 leaves, but they've got to be opposite from each other, meaning the easy corner triangles are opposite from each other. So I'm going to start one right there and sew it this way. I'm going to lay another one on this inner corner and sew it this way. And then I know the other 2 are just going to go on the opposite corners, and I don't have to worry about making a mistake.
Maybe turn your machine light off so they can see a little better.
Oh, thanks, Cash. You always have to remind me that because I forget. When I turn on my machine, everything turns on, my iron, everything at the same time. And I forgot to turn my light off. Okay. So what we're doing for this is we're just following this center line. Otherwise, you can mark it if you don't have a Seam So Easy guide. And I don't want to take the time to mark, so that's why I always use my guide. Another thing I forgot to show you too is, look, sis, I put one of my doll quilts down for a mat. This is for my Farm Girl Vintage 2 book, and this is one of my doll quilts. This is the log cabin. So last time I filmed, I said it was time for a new mat, and trying to switch it up a little bit. And so I remembered. Okay, so now I'm just going to do the opposite on this corner. We'll see if we can get through this whole block without Reed waking up, right? If he wakes up and we hear him, we may take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come right back. Okay. Now, while those 2 are under the machine, I'm just going to put a little scrap through so that I can trim these off. And I just do an approximate 1/4 inch seam. Again, it's already sewn. You could use your rotary. There's nothing wrong with using a rotary cutter. I just think my scissors are faster, and so I just grab them because they're right here, so that's why I think it's faster. So I go over here. I'm going to stick these up in the window because I know y'all are afraid I'm going to catch my curtains on fire. So, so what I'm going to do is set these seams, and for these I am going to press open. Now this block, even though it's 8 inch, some of these seams are going to be open and some of them are going to be closed, but you can see which ones I do and why as we go along the way. But the reason I'm doing these open is because they're small pieces and I just want to make them as flat as possible. And when you have open seams, that means you have a flatter block. And I don't think I'll use the roller for these. It's okay if I did, but I don't really need to. It's when I cross seams, I'm going to pull out that roller. So I just open these up beforehand, kind of set the iron on it, get it hot, and put a clapper on. Now, while those are cooling, I'm going to go ahead and go onto the flower section. And so what I'm going to do there is, you can see that this goes to that, this goes to that, this goes to that. Just in that order right there. And then I'll go ahead and do the other sides. And I really like the design boards for this because it helps me not make as many mistakes, or sometimes no mistakes at all, because everything is laid out and I know exactly which direction. I also use my design boards for auditioning my fabric, so that when I, cut these blocks out, if I want to switch the color of flower or something like that, I can lay it all out and see what it's going to look like. And if I want to switch it up, then's the time to do it before I start sewing. And it's just kind of easy to see. Okay, so This one goes on the other side of the flower center. Now, I'm going to have this recipe for you for the 8-inch. Of course, the 16-inch is in the book, so you've already got that recipe. But the recipe for the 8-inch block, I will list that here in the video description. So, and I don't know why, for some reason, I didn't put my letters on here, but there's letters in the book assigned, so I will assign letters in the cutting just like in the book, only the new cutting for the smaller block. Okay. Now we've got those finished. We're going to come over and we're going to press all of these open as well. We're going to check these out. These leaves, I'm going to set them over here. We'll work on those while these are cooling. Oh, forgot one part. Set the seams. This one's a little bit harder because I did both sides, but I definitely do like to set the seams. That's for sure. And what I do is I just get them lined up here and ready to go. And I can kind of do them all at the same time when they're small like this. Let me set that. And then okay, come on, seams. All right, then I do one side. Way I can get away with just 2 clappers going that way. Okay, so now I'm gonna, this is the way these leaves go right here, and you notice that this is a directional print, so I could have either chosen to make the stripes go across or down, but either way I wanted them to match, and because they're rectangles, that's easy to do. And so what I need to do is just sew this background on top of these. So I usually will just turn it this way on the machine so I know that I'm not going to make a mistake by sewing to the bottom on accident. All right. Let's just run that through. Okay, these little segments I'm also going to press open just because there's a lot going on in that little flower block, and so I want, again, all of my seams to lie as flat as possible. So I'm just going to do that, turn this clapper over because it's still warm on this side, and I want to start with the cool side so that that can start to absorb the heat faster. Same thing for that. Then I've got all 3 of these. Come back over here. This is the way these go, so I'm just going to go ahead and join those together that way. Now, none of these seams need to line up. They just need to line up from beginning end, you know, to at the very end of the strip. And you can see what I mean by center is right there, so I don't need any of the seams lined up. No matching on this flower. This is one of my easy peasy flowers that I love to do. I'm gonna come over here. These should be cool enough now. Right there. I'll work on those next. While this is cooling. So this is usually what I do. Again, a lot of times I'll have more than one block going. But when I have a block like this with several things going on, a lot of times I'll just make one at a time. And of course, I'm always doing my bonus piecing in between. I can't wait to show you my progress on that. And, you know, probably sometime next month I'll do a video on that when I get a little bit farther on my bonus quilt. Okay, so I want to make sure that these are on the top, so that means they go that way. Okay. And so I'm going to pick up this stem and sew it to one side. And again, because I've used 1/4 inch seam allowances and cut correctly, then they all match up. Let me just grab another scrap here. Okay, I'm going to come over here, set the seam, press this open. So this entire flower is pressed open. Let me feel that. It's still cool. All right, now I can add the bottom petal onto this one. Line it up at the beginning. If you're a pinner, go ahead and pin, but I just find it's easier to let my needle and my foot hold my beginning there, and then I just hold on to the end. When it's small piecing like this and there really isn't any place for it to go, so I don't find it necessary to pin. But that's just me. You do you, and that's great. Sometimes I'm in the mood to pin if I really feel like I need to match things up and I'm worried that they won't. Okay. We're going to open that up. Sometimes it's hard to just even get these seams started. There we go. I find that when I have a little bit shorter nails, Cash just did my nails. When I have a little bit shorter nails, it's harder for me to open up the seams. Okay, that one feels too warm, so I'm going to start with that to cool one. Okay, we're going to go back over here. I know I'm lucky I have a daughter that films me and does my nails too, right? Okay, we're going to start there. Finish up this leaf. Okay, set the seam. Again. Okay. Let that get nice and warm. All right, I'm going to rotate these into the back. Okay, that's what that flower looks like right there. I'm going to put it right there. And what I did was I stacked my design boards. Here's all the rest of my background on my basket pieces. So I didn't even show you I'm going to be doing a yellow basket for this. And so the pieces that I need for it, while I'm letting that cool, I'm just going to pull and we're going to frame this little flower right here. And so I've got, let's see, is this the longest one? I can't believe I didn't put my letters here. Okay, so that means these are the two side ones. See what I mean by having a design board so you know everything's right side up, how it goes. That's what I'm going to do there. And I'm also going to pull these in. I have a little extra square cut. I'm going to pull these in and put those for easy corner triangles. Okay, I'm going to grab this. So now all I have to do is sew my leaves to my flower, and then I can start framing. And then once I get these frames on, that's going to end up being a square that fills the center of that basket inside the handle. Okay, now this one, I wanted to see what I did on this one. I did press it open. I was going to say, now this one I'm still going to press open. You could put, you know, press it up to the flower, but I just find that it's going to still lie flatter at this point if I just press the entire flower open. I'm going to just press the whole thing and put a clapper on both sides. And then when I start to add the borders on, I'm going to press towards the borders. Now these little easy corner triangles end up being this little one right here. Okay, you can see it, the big one up here. But I like to put the borders on first and then add those. I could add them on this top piece, but it's just going to be more accurate to have, you know, this entire square and then add them instead of trying to add it onto a strip and not get them, you know, maybe going a little bit crooked. All right. Look at that cute little flower. Very easy construction. And then we're just going to lay this here, and you can put your seams up or down. I kind of like to flip them up just so that I can see what's going on, but you can put them down too. So maybe I'll do these down, maybe the other side up. So at this point, as I'm running this through here, I'm just using my red line here as a guide, because that's exactly 1/4 inch away from the needle. If I have this center line lined up with the needle, I know that that 1/4 inch is exactly, I mean, that line is exactly 1/4 inch. Run that through and do the other side quickly. Oh, this one I said I was going to do the seams up. There's nothing worse than going through and then finding out you've flipped a seam, right, as you were sewing. So just going to show you both ways. This way I can kind of hold it down and I know where I'm going to sew, and I can line everything up, make sure it's straight. And this line really helps me a lot to just keep things going correctly. Okay, now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to press these open. I'm going to set the seams, and I don't really feel it's necessary to press those open, these little borders. Okay, so I'm going to show you something on this block in just a minute. We just got to let it cool. So once I sew this on and do these, it should measure 5.5 inches, I believe, if I did my quilty math right. So I'm going to pull in my 5.5 inch trim it, and I'm just going to trim something up if I have to. And I just noticed there was one seam that didn't line up exactly at the end. So it should be cool enough that I can show you what I'm talking about. So see right here, I know this was cut correctly. This was cut the same way as that. So either this easy corner triangle, which usually is the case, maybe, you know, kind of stretched out a little bit. And so I'm going to sew, since that's on the bottom, I'm not going to worry about that yet. I'm going to sew the top across here, and then I'll lay the ruler on it and see what we got going on. And then I'll tell you how I addressed that problem. I could have eased the fabric in and made it fit, but because it was an easy, which is what I usually do, but because it was an easy corner triangle that I didn't square up after, I just think that's the problem right there. So we'll just end up trimming that off, and it's not a big deal. Okay, I'm gonna hurry, set the seams, press this back, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do the easy corner triangle. But while we're doing that, I'm gonna move this design board right here. Keep these so I don't lose track of them. I know what's going on, but instead of using my little scraps here, I know that these two on the basket, these two pieces right here, need to be sewn together. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew those together and get a little bit ahead on this section while I'm waiting for that to cool down. So these are cut the same size, and so I just want them to line up. Again, you can pin. I just kind of line up as I go along and ease those in. One more thing I'm going to do is I've got a rectangle and an easy corner triangle. Right here's the rectangle that I'm talking about. So this is going to go on the bottom corner, and this one's going to go on the bottom corner. Okay, so I might as well just run those through. And by then that that flower should be cool. So I love this little guide just because I can use it for 1/4 inch seam allowances. I can do easy corner triangles all at the same time. No marking. And it's just easy peasy. Okay, no, I'm not going to run that through. Looking for a scrap. Okay, so I'm going to press that open, but I'm going to go ahead and just trim those off. All right, let's see what we got going on over here. Again, like I say, it's like checking in the oven, see how things are going. See how nice that looks? Okay, I'm going to just press that open as soon as I can get it open. There we go. I like to use the tip of my iron to get those all the way open. Set that. Might as well just put a clapper on that separately. Now, I know these are 2 strips that I've sewn together, but I know they're shorter strips, but I still kind of like to, how do I want to say, I kind of want to pull on them a little bit and make sure they're straight. Sometimes when you're sewing 2 strips together, one will stay long and one will go shorter because of how you're feeding it in the machine automatically. When you're putting fabric under the machine, you've got feed dogs underneath and you don't at the top, and so your fabric underneath is going to sew at a faster rate. And so when there's strips like this, I kind of just like to kind of make sure they're even by tugging a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put an easy corner triangle of this basket trim fabric right here at the top. That's just going to round the corners of that basket. That's all that does. You know, you could have squared off handles, that's fine. But as you know, if you've watched me much at all or followed me over the years, you know I'm always using this easy corner triangles for my picture blocks and traditional blocks whenever I can. I think it just shapes up the blocks nice and easy and makes them look cute. Okay, so I'm just going to trim that off by 1/4 inch. The only trick you have with easy corner triangles is you just want to make sure that you're always sewing them the correct direction. Okay, all right. Those are nice and flat and ready to go. And what I'm going to do with these is just press away, making sure to use the tip of the iron without tugging too much on these because I don't want to distort them. I'm going to put that there. I've noticed 2 spots that I've got to check on this. I've got to check this spot and see if I just trim kind of that off, or see how this one kind of hung over a little bit. I'm gonna look at that right now. Okay, Cass, let me bring it over here so you can see. Can you see that close? The reason that's hanging like that over is because I moved, I guess, and I started on the corner here, but I didn't end up on the corner. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and run that through again, and then I won't have that little hangover. So I'm going to make sure that corner is lined up right on that line. And that's all it is just, it's only a 1/16 of an inch really, but it does make a difference. Okay. Oh, there we go. That helps a lot. And then if there's still any hangover at all that shouldn't be, I'll trim it off with the Trim It Up ruler. Okay, so I'm going to bring, oh, got it buried under here. I'm going to grab my little mat over here. I'm going to bring it over here because it might be easier for you to see. Let me grab some kind of a rotary. Where's my, here it is. Lost my Trim It ruler already. Okay, so I can use either side on this. But see, I'm going to lay this on here, and I'm going to look at the top first. And I can see that, yes, indeed, I can trim that little teeny piece off. just that little corner. Then I'm going to flip it over here so I can see what's going on at the bottom. Let me line it up at the top here. Okay, so just as I suspected, this whole, let me make sure before I trim anything off, this whole thing just went because the little easy corner triangles can be trimmed off, and it won't make a difference on how the block looks at all. Okay, so now I know that's exactly 5.5 inches square, and I can see inside here in the aqua seams what the finished size is going to look like inside. All right, and everything's lined up good. Now when you're doing the 16-inch block, because obviously this is half size, this was 5.5, then what you're going to want to do for that, to square that, is to use the 10.5 inch, trim it. Okay, that's what I did when I do those big blocks. All right, I've got a lot of scraps going on here. All right, let's just put that up there for just a minute so we can see what other basket pieces we need to construct. All right, so here's the trim of the basket. So it goes at the top, and then these little rectangles are going to go on each side right here so that they're going to be at the bottom. And that's what's going to form this little piece down here. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and just do the other side. Just like this. Okay, I'm going to bring this over here, and I also pressed these open, but that's upside down, but you can see how those corners meet that trim there. Let me set the seams. Sometimes I forget, but not very often, because I do think it's pretty important to set those seams. It just kind of, when I say set the seams, what I mean by that, I have got a few questions, is, you know, you've got your bobbin thread and you've got your top thread going in and interlocking these seams, but I like to press those flat so they're just a little bit flatter, those seams, before I press, because that helps my seam allowance go flatter when pressing, and therefore my block is flatter. All right, so I'm going to let that cool, and then we're going to go on to the next thing that I can do, which is, this is the main basket body right here, and it's got 2 background easy corner triangles. And this is what I mean by you want to make sure they go the correct direction. I mean, I could either sew it this way or I could sew it this way. I want to make sure I'm sewing it this way so that the other one I sew this way as well, so that it forms that basket shape. Okay, so I'm going to start right in the corner. I'm going to pay better attention and make sure that that is following that red line right there. And again, if it isn't, you can also, you know, always re-sew right over it. But I'm going to make sure I go right into that, so I don't have to worry about that getting, you know, wonky at all. And then just go ahead and line this up exactly how I need to, and make sure that that means I'm going to sew from here to here, or I could turn around this way. You know, right-handed, left-handed, whichever you are, whichever angle is easiest for you to come in on. Okay. I also, one of the other reasons I love sewing on this featherweight is I like to sew with the original foot that it comes in, and I like that it's an open toe. I always like to sew with an open toe because I want to see exactly where my needle is going into my fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to trim these off, and I'm going to go ahead and press these open after setting the seams. That looks cute right there. And on these triangles, even though they're already sewn, this is still a triangle, so I just still try not to stretch it out too much. I just want to make it nice and flat without stretching it out. Okay, this should go right. I'm going to add another one. It's not quite long enough. Okay, so I'm going to be able to sew these two pieces together. As soon as that comes out, I really can't, well, I shouldn't say I can't do much. I can. I'm going to pull this in, because at this point I can take this border, and so this is the basket handle. I really shouldn't call it a border. And I can sew these to each side. Okay, I'm going to get these trimmings out of here so we can see what we've really got going on here. And so I'm just gonna line that up there at the top, accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance, line it up here at the bottom. Now, let me show you something as I'm starting to, I'll get about halfway in and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm following that line. You can see that this is a little bit longer. This bottom piece is a little bit longer, but that doesn't bother me because, as I just said, that piece is gonna go in at a faster rate. So just a little bit faster than the top. So by the time I get to the end right here and line them up, they're going to be exactly even. See, you can see that. So that's a good trick to know when you have two pieces that you're sewing together and one is a little bit longer than the other, but they need to meet up, then I would put the longer one underneath, whether it seams or not. And so a lot of times I'll just do that. I'll just test it. Start that, and this is just a touch longer on that corner, so I'm going to start right here. And I just make sure as I'm going along that these edges, that I can see these edges. That's why I'm always kind of leaning my head in this way, and Cass gets my head in there because I'm always leaning in, because I want to look at that side and make sure those are lined up. This is especially important when you're sewing smaller blocks like this. Seems like bigger blocks are a little bit more forgiving, but all these small blocks are just so fun and so cute, and I will just never get tired of making small blocks. Love big blocks, love small blocks. I just like making two sizes. Oh, that's upside down again. Okay, here's these basket handles. I'm going to go ahead and press them away from all the seams. Make sure it's open all the way so I don't have any little pleats in there. Okay, I'm gonna let that cool. This is sideways, I know, but I'm gonna sew these two together. Now when I hold it up, it looks like this one is maybe just a touch longer, so I'm gonna put that at the bottom. I don't know, they looked pretty close to me. I don't really know if one's longer than the other or not. But see how you can kind of just line them up this way, and then as I'm going along, we'll see how it comes out, right? See if we did okay. That looks great. That looks perfect. Yay, I hate to say the word perfect in quilting because there really is no such thing, but I'm proud of how those lined up. That's pretty perfect. Okay, set that aside for a minute. Let's set these seams. And I am going to do this open, and I'm going to use my seam roller for this because, like I said, especially when I've got seams crossing like this, I like to use that roller and make sure it is open all the way and flat. Okay, so all I'm going to do is roll that, and then I press it flat. And see how I'm kind of pulling this because they are 2 strips, just to make sure they're going to be flat. I'm going to grab one that's cool. I'm going to pull that out a little bit. It does matter how you put these clappers on because that's how they're going to cool flat. You don't want to just, you want to make sure your block is flat when you apply the clappers. You don't want to just put them on there if your block is wrinkled. It's, you know, they're not magic. They're not going to magically straighten it out if it's wrinkled underneath there, if it's got a crease. Okay, so I'm going to put this top basket handle on, and then I've got these 2 easy corner triangles that I'm going to add on at the end. That's going to kind of help that curve. Again, it's kind of going to repeat that curve of the handle. Okay, so let's start up here. Get up close and personal so I can see what I'm doing. Get that started. Line up the edges. All right, and we'll pull this over. Let me let that cool for just a minute longer. I'm going to go over here. Cutter out of the way. I'm going to push that up. Get all these threads out. Okay, let's see what we've got going here. See how nice and flat that is now. And as soon as we, okay, so we can't add this on until the end. You can see how much wider it is because we've got these 2 borders right here. They're going to add to each side. And so I'm just going to lay this out. Just let that sit there nice and comfy, cozy. Let her hang out with my little quilting friend there, made for me by Jen. Okay, and I know I've told you about her before. Okay. I usually, it's still a little bit warm, but I kind of want to make sure that we get this finished up without too long of breaks. No, it's an adventure it's an adventure sewing with the baby here because you never know when he's going to wake up and be hungry, so. Okay. He's just so fun. He's getting big. He's 5 months now. And then I'm going to add the other one. And I really like how these background easy corner triangles just soften that corner there and just echo that curve so that those baskets just go right around that way. Okay, let me see if I was paying attention and went all the way to the corner. Looks like well, I don't know. That needs to cool for just. There's nothing under there cooling. It doesn't need to cool. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and trim these. I was going to see if I had time to see if I wanted to fix it a little bit if I had to, but I think it looks pretty good. Set the seams, press away, and see how those handles curve now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and do some quilty physics, let that go flatter, clear up my workspace a little bit. And let me pull this ruler in and show you that this is what I would square up, the 8.5 inch, because this is an 8-inch block. So right now it measures 8 inches. But I love these lines. Let me pull this in so I can show you while that's cooling. Because look how these lines on the ruler just will line up with everything. You can see where these baskets are supposed to be. Of course, this isn't on the mat, but this actually is flatter. It's just because it's on a soft spot. But I love how you can line up all those lines across the center. See how you can see that center line on the stem? and the leaves, and it just helps you to know what's straight, what's crooked. If you have a problem with your block on the inside, it's not just for squaring up the outside, it's for the inside too, so you can maybe fix something if you need to. And then my 16.5 inch, of course, is what I use for this large one. Okay, so I use 2 sizes when I'm making each block. Okay, there was some chit chat right there. Let's see what we got going on here. And there we go, there's the top. And now we can add the borders so that we can join it to the side. Okay, did I cut this wrong? It doesn't matter if I cut it wrong, because guess what? It's too long. It looks like I cut them 1/2 inch too long, which a lot of times I'll do. And so to me, it doesn't matter if it's too long, because I'll just sew it up and then I'll trim it. Now, if I cut them too short, I'd be kind of sad, right? Then I'd have to just go cut new fabric. But since that's not the case, and as you've said before, whenever I've made mistakes here on my video, you like me to keep them in. And again, I don't know, I hate saying mistakes, really. I mean, it's just like, that's just part of making a quilt. So I'm just going to kind of, since I'm going to be trimming this, see, I'm just going to make one end go one way and one end go the other way, and then I can just trim them off square. Because, you know, this is just part of quilting. I mean, you cut something too small, you cut it too large, whatever, it's not a big deal. You just grab some fabric and cut a little piece again so that it's correct. But whenever I do make a cutting mistake, I always like to, I'm always happy when I find out that I cut it too large, because that means that I can always fix it very easily. So what I'm going to do is come over here. I'll just grab any ruler. I'm not really measuring, I'm just, oh, yes I am measuring, that's too short. I need a longer ruler. See, I'm just gonna, see what I'm saying? I'm just gonna see what I'm doing, not what I'm saying. I am just gonna trim that up across the bottom. I didn't know if that rotary cutter was sharp or not. I just had one in my drawer that I haven't used for a long time, so. Okay, now see, I'm lining up, but this is lined up too. I could have used a trim ruler at this point, but really all I need is a ruler that has 2 lines that are squared up. Okay, so that's taken care of. Throw all the scraps on the floor, that's what I like to do. Pick them up later. And now I can press away. Now I've got these little border strips, and what these border strips do, they'll allow for the basket top to be narrower than the basket bottom. Let me throw those in there, grab my hair clip. In fact, that's what I should have done before, so my hair's not always getting in the video. Well, that's cool. I'm gonna throw my hair up in my little flower clip. All right, cool, cool, cool. A lot of times if I want it to go faster, I'll just turn it over. And these are really warm, meaning that absorb the heat right there. And so if I turn it over and let that wood absorb the rest of that heat, it goes a little bit faster. Okay, so that's what the back side looks like. It's all open in the flower, and then I started pressing towards the outside when I started adding the handles and these borders. I'm gonna bring this over. Oh my gosh, that's gonna be so cute. I get so excited to do these fun blocks. I love picture blocks. Well, you know, let's face it, I love all blocks, right? Oh, I forgot to check to see which is longest. This is what I usually do. Okay, see how you can see that this is just a touch longer right there? And what happened to my fire? It went off on the TV. my fire went out. So I'm going to put that at the bottom because it's just a little bit longer. And then it's going to ease in just automatically with those bottom feed dogs. I'm still going to line it up right here. That's the last seam in that basket. Let's see how it looks. Now, I could press this open if I wanted to. There's an awful lot of seams going across here. And I think, in fact, I think that's what I did on the other one, but I'll show you the back of the other one just in case I did it different. But I think that I went ahead and did it down there. And this is what I do at this point when I'm going over triangles right there, maybe. I'll take my roller and I'll use it on the front side of my seams, just like where I want it to make sure it's all opened up because I'm pressing to one side for this final press. I'm going to end up pressing this upside down just so that I can use, you know, this end of the iron like this to press it open. I'm going to bring those two in, and then for the final press I like to just go ahead and put some on the corner here. Then why not put those in there? Okay, I'm just going to let that cool for a minute. While I'm doing that, so I can show you the final block, I mean, you obviously know what it looks like. Let's see, I did tell you I'd show you the back of this to see if I did that. Yes, I did press down that way. I'll take a picture of all three of these blocks together when they're done. But while that's cooling, let's get this out of the way. Okay, so again, I want to say, I know my friend Jen made this, but she's Noodle and Lou on Instagram. Noodle and Lou. I know I've said that several times, but I do keep getting questions, but isn't she awesome? Okay. So let's talk about the next two. I just want to show them to you, even though, again, I've told you that I have done the tutorial. So this is my Tall Pines block. Here's the quilt. Okay, it's 70 wide by 76 tall. And of course, I'll post these on Instagram too each week. But I did this totally with my scrappy greens, and I tell you all about it and talk to you about it in my video that I did a couple years ago when I was doing this. And then that's the second to the last, and then my last one is my toy sewing machine block. Yes, I collect toy sewing machines, and look at this fun quilt. It's 69 by 80, and I just used all my scrappy stash to make those. And let me fold this back so you can see that. Look how cute that quilt is. I love it. Love it, love it. All those little toy sewing machines in a row. Okay, what else can we chit chat about? Do you think that's enough? Maybe I should lift off Miss Millie so you can see this log cabin. And if you have my Farm Girl Vintage 2 book, you'll see the pattern and the sew-alongs and videos and all that stuff I did on my doll quilts with my vintage doll beds. They're so fun. But I like to use my doll quilts for wall hangings, for sewing machine mats, for placemats, for actually doll quilts, you know. All right, there we go with that. Let me grab this pink. I like how you can just kind of pull these out flat. I'm going to turn that off so I don't forget. Look how cute. All right, so we've got those two. Let me lift this bigger one up. Look how fun those are. Don't you just love a big block and half size block? You can even, because two of these stacked on top of each other, you know, would fit this size block as well. I don't know, I just love them. Okay, so even though this is the end, like I say, of my tutorials for my book, Quilt Along, my Scrappiness is Happiness, Quilt Along. Thank you so much for all of you who are sewing with me. This Quilt Along has been so fun. And I love doing this book. I'm sure in a couple years I'll probably do another scrapbook. And in the meantime, I'll be doing other Sew Your Stash series, and those will probably end up in my book as well, but I'll just continue with those maybe once a month. Let's see, Cass is going out of town next week. Then I'll be going, so my next video will probably be for my virtual spring quilt market. Okay, where I show you all my new fabric collections and what's going on with them and when they're coming out, and talk to you about all the sew along quilts and things like that. So that's probably going to be my next video. And then I'll be doing, again, my promised floss tube. I'll be doing some more crochet videos and some more Sew Your Stash, all that kind of things. I'm getting ready for my sew along that starts in July. That's with my Bee Vintage fabric, with my Sew Simple Shapes. So I've got a lot going on. So I'll be throughout the summer probably filming twice a month at least, maybe 3 times. Who knows, 1 month, maybe even 4, who knows, but twice a month. And because, you know, summer vacations, glamping, all of that kind of stuff between Cass and I. And thanks so much for joining me on my channel. And I enjoy you being here and sewing with me and chatting with you and talking about all things scrappy. I hope I've inspired you to make your own baskets, no matter which size. I'll leave the recipe for these. And all right, I'll chat with you later.